Ford. Ford, one of the largest family-owned businesses in the world, was founded by Henry Ford. Henry is often called the man who shaped the 20th century. But his is a life unspared by controversy. It plagued his life to such an extent that Henry was the only American who was shown in a positive light in Mein Kampf. He was even awarded the Grand Cross of the German Eagle, the highest honor for foreigners in Nazi Germany. Now, if you don't think that this is controversial, I don't know what is. Ford today is a household name, but Henry's story is no ordinary one. Let us take a look at this journey of a boy from Michigan whose portrait was kept by the desk of Adolf Hitler himself.
People used to say a lot of nasty things about me. Oh, this guy's a lunatic.
Henry was born in 1863 in Michigan to William and Mary Ford. His parents had a farm business, which they hoped to pass on to their son in due course of time. However, young Henry had other plans. He was never very interested in farm work. It was always mechanics that appealed to him. His father gave him a pocket watch when he was in his teens. Henry spent all his time taking it apart and putting it together again, learning its working in the process. When he did this for many of his friends in the neighborhood, he gained a reputation for being an extremely skilled watch repairman. Henry lost his mother early, and this loss devastated him. With nothing left to hold him back to the farm, he decided to move a couple of years later. He got a job as a machine apprentice in Detroit. From there was no looking back. Over the next couple of years, he moved around working similar odd jobs. He always looked for jobs where he didn't know much, just so that he could learn, and move between different opportunities when he felt that he could learn more elsewhere. This appetite for knowledge would soon become one of Henry's most appreciated characteristics. Years later, he returned home to work on the farm while continuing to work on operating and servicing steam engines. How did he know how to do this, you ask? Simply by befriending those who did. What Henry didn't know, he sought to learn from those who did. Henry got married in 1888 to Clara Bryant. Now having to support dependents, he worked briefly at a sawmill. In 1891, they moved to Detroit, with Henry working as an engineer with the Edison Illuminating Company. Henry quickly proved his worth, and by 1896, he had risen to the post of chief engineer. In the little free time that he got, which wasn't much since Henry worked very hard, he worked on a quadricycle. This pet project of Henry's was a self-propelled vehicle with large bicycle-like wheels. The Association of Edison Illuminating Companies convention that was held in 1896 may be described as a turning point in Henry's life. It was here that he got to meet Thomas Edison. Henry introduced his quadricycle to Thomas, who undoubtedly was extremely impressed. Thomas asked Henry to keep at it, words that inspired him unlike any others.
Don't ever let somebody tell you you can't do something.
This was also the beginning of a friendship that would last a lifetime. Much later, after Ford had been established, they set out on many adventures together, both literally and metaphorically. Even towards the end of their respective lives, they were still like little boys. When Thomas was confined to a wheelchair, Henry bought one, just so that the two could race each other. Just before Thomas died, his son captured his last breath in a test tube and presented it to Henry, who would treasure it for the rest of his life. Coming back to the 1890s, the encouragement of his idol made Henry determined to keep going.
How much you can take and keep moving forward.
With several financial supporters, Henry formed the Detroit Automobile Company in 1899, which was later known as the Henry Ford Company. Frustrated with Henry's slow innovation process, the investors were unhappy. This led Henry to leave the company that had his own name, along with the rights to the name, in 1902. In 1903, Henry established the Ford Motor Company, along with a longtime associate, Alexander Malcolmson, with $28,000 as capital. Whenever people said that Henry started out with nothing, he sought to differ. He felt that you always start with something. It's how you use these things that matter. That is exactly what he did. The company started slow in the beginning, assembling only a few cars every day with several workers, contributing manually in assembly. A few years thus dedicated to this, along with Henry's persistent search for an efficient and affordable car, led to the development of the Model T. This was an instant success. The company witnessed such tremendous sales that they just couldn't produce cars fast enough. They moved to a bigger plant and hired more workers, but it still wasn't enough. Enter the ingenuity of Henry and his team, who borrowed concepts from different industries like watchmakers, gun makers, bicycle makers, and meat packers to come up with the first moving assembly line in the automobile industry. This revolutionary line helped the company reach greater heights, and they were now churning out more cars than ever before. This put out so many cars that by 1918, half of the cars on American roads were Model Ts. Along this way, Henry had come up with another innovation that would establish him as one of the greatest industrialists ever. Facing high labor turnover, the company was forced to hire large numbers of workers for limited vacancies, with no guarantee of their level of skill. Henry decided to increase the wage rate of unskilled workers to $5, which was twice the average rate being offered elsewhere in the industry. This method, which was previously unheard of, worked wonders. All the best workers came to Ford, now content with the promise of good pay. These characteristics of highly paid workers, efficient mass production, and other revolutionary techniques contributed to Ford's growth as the world's largest automobile maker. With success comes greed, and Henry was no exception. With a dramatic heist, he bought out all his shareholders by 1920, thus granting full control of the company to his family. He had also made his son, Edsel, president. As always, Henry was the one who was truly in charge, and his word trumped everyone else's. He ignored the words of Edsel and others in senior positions, persisting with the production of the Model T, not something to suit changing times. The next couple of decades were not the best that Ford has experienced. Struggles in the marketplace, combined with Henry's controversies outside his professional life, made times less than ideal. In 1943, Edsel passed away after battling with cancer. This brought Henry back to the helm. Though he was far from his best years, old and suspicious, he made decisions that did not inspire confidence in his own staff. Finally, in 1945, Henry's wife and daughter-in-law, Edsel's widow, threatened to sell off their stake in the company if he did not transfer control of the company to his grandson, Henry Ford II. With no options left, Henry agreed and retired to his estate, where he passed away in 1947. Throughout Henry's life, he was involved in various other ventures which had mixed results. He had a brief fling with racing, which he attributes to the popular liking of the game, not his own. Racing was a way to measure the true worth of an automobile at the time, so Henry had no options. He participated as both builder and driver. In fact, he was inducted into the Motorsports Hall of America in 1996. Henry even ran for a Senate seat after World War I, but suffered a very narrow loss. This brings us to a phase of his life that followed shortly, where his views came very close at shutting down the company that he had worked so hard to build. Henry ran a paper in the 1920s called the Dearborn Independent. This newspaper made a splash because of the strongly anti-Semitic content that it promoted. Henry was thought to retain considerable power in the affairs of the business. Regardless of this, his dislike of the Jews was no secret. He had also hosted Nazi supporters and was held to high regard by Nazi officials in Germany too. The company and Henry started receiving backlash for the newspaper. To counter dropping sales, Henry was forced to issue an apology, which was fairly well received by the public. Henry's achievements are always taken with a pinch of salt. On the journey to becoming the man who made cars affordable to everyone, he made choices that not everyone would agree with. However, it is these choices that define a person. Henry thus had his faults, but he is unarguably one of the greatest innovators the world has seen. That is all that we have for you today. If you like this video, then do click the like button. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell to receive fresh updates. If you enjoyed this video, consider hitting the like and subscribe buttons. It does wonders for the YouTube algorithm, so more people can see our videos and so that you can be notified when we launch our next video. We try and put out at least one new one per week, and as you can imagine, the research and editing alone of these type of videos takes us close to 18 hours. So we would really appreciate it if you could also check out our Patreon. For just $1 a month, you can support our work. We produce over 12 videos per month, so that is literally 8 cents per video. Thank you so much, and we'll see you at our next unmasking.